Well, somebody's got to win this division. Grossi, Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Podcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Yeah, now things are going to start to get a little bit more difficult. Grossi, and today we are going to be predicting and breaking down the division that is the NFC South. Now, for the past 2 days, we've been putting out these prediction videos, predicting the ceiling and the floor of each team, talking a little bit about their offseason, and for the NFC North and NFC East, I was pretty darn good last year. I predicted a bunch of records, and I was like, yeah, I'm doing well. While I was redoing this and while I was looking over everything and prepping for this episode, I was like, all right, I kind of got this streak going. I've built all this credibility, and then I realized that I predicted the Panthers to finish second last year, so that's out the window now. So last year, I predicted the Saints to win the division with a ceiling of 11-6 and a floor of 9-8. They did finish 9-8, by the way. They just finished in second. I had the Panthers finishing second with a ceiling of 10-7 and a floor of 7-10. They finished fourth with a record of 2-15. Then I had the Falcons finishing third with a ceiling of 10-7 and a floor of 7-10. They finished 7-10 and in third. And I had the Buccaneers all the way down at number 4 with a ceiling of 7-10 and a floor of 5-12. They finished the season 9-8. So yeah, I whiffed it completely on the Panthers, also the Buccaneers. I apologize, Buccaneers fans. You proved me wrong. And what was my punishment? Baker Mayfield's perfect passer rating at Lambeau Field, so I hope that is redemption enough. So let's get started, starting with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which, by the way, a huge shock out of nowhere. I know I wasn't the only one who anticipated the Buccaneers not being good last year, but Baker Mayfield was so freaking good last season that Buccaneers fans have already forgotten about Tom Brady.
So he's really not a part of our family. Also, he's divorced, so he's really not a part of his family.
Except for that whole Super Bowl ring thing. But the Buccaneers impressed a lot of people. And I know that they still finished 9-8, but they won a playoff game against a struggling Eagles team. They went in and were very competitive against the Lions, and Baker Mayfield threw a bad interception, but that didn't happen very often during the season. And so the Buccaneers heading into this offseason, there were a lot of questions. Are they going to re-sign Baker? Is Mike Evans going to be coming back? And the answer to those questions was yes, both of them are coming back. In addition, they bring back Whitehead. They get Bryce Hall. And in the draft, they draft Graham Barton, which is a guy that I really wanted for the Green Bay Packers because, damn, I think that's going to be a good offensive lineman. And that was definitely a position of need. And last year, the Buccaneers, they didn't blow the doors off anybody on offense. They were 20th in points per game scored. They were the 32nd, the worst rushing offense in the league. Gotta hope that gets better this year. And they were 17th in passing offense. However, what made them pretty darn good was their defense, not their passing defense. We'll talk about that. But points allowed per game, they were top 10. They ranked 7th. Rush defense was 5th overall in the league. And their passing defense was 29th, so that was not pretty, but everything else was pretty darn good. And they're in this division where there are teams that are rebuilding, that are trying to figure it out, like the Panthers, like the Saints, the Falcons. I think they're doing good things at this point. And the Buccaneers were able to win the division during week 18 last year. And taking a look at their season, I don't think that there's going to be significant differences. Considering they're getting the majority of the crew back together, I imagine they're going to be finishing around the same spot. They don't have the easiest schedule. They do have to play the Lions and the Chiefs, and there's going to be some tough games in there like the Eagles, the Ravens, the 49ers. But again, there's some question marks with their division, and I think that with the upgrades that they made, I think they will still be a very competitive team that will be competing for that division title. So I have their floor, if everything goes poorly, at 8-9, just because there's some games that are challenging in here. Like, I think there's some toss-up games. For example, I wouldn't be surprised if they wind up splitting with a team like the Saints or the Falcons, or losing to a team like the Chargers, because again, there's just some question marks there. But I have their ceiling all the way up at 11-6, which I think might be enough to win the division. It would be a 2-game improvement from where they were last year, and I think that kind of fits within the parameters of what the Buccaneers are doing. I don't think they're going to be world enders. I don't think that they're necessarily ready for a Super Bowl, but they are going to be competitive. They can definitely win the NFC South, and I see them doing pretty well this season. Then you got the Atlanta Falcons. who drafted Michael Penix Jr. after paying Kirk Cousins.
I have made a series of very bad decisions, and I cannot make another one.
And just because it's funny, Kirk Cousins could not have been happy about this.
You said they'd be left in the city under my supervision.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
But the Falcons definitely made some headlines this offseason. They brought in Kirk Cousins, gave him $1 kajillion, even after he's coming off a major injury. They got guys like Darnell Mooney. They brought another tight end in. They addressed edge and defensive line in the draft, of course, after drafting Michael Penix. And I know that I'm very confused that they did not draft a pass rusher like Dallas Turner really early, but hey, what do I know? The Falcons, they finished 7-10 last year, and I feel like the Falcons have just been this team that have been borderline good for the past few years. Of course, when they had Matt Ryan, they were very competitive, go to a Super Bowl, 28-3 happens. Their franchise never really recovers after that. And last year, they were okay. They were really good in some areas and then mediocre in others. For example, when it comes to their offense, they were 26 in points per game with Desmond Ridder and Arthur Smith, which thankfully both of those folks are gone in Atlanta, which I know Falcons fans are very happy about because maybe Kyle Pitts will actually get the ball now. They were 9th in rushing offense, which makes sense considering they have multiple running backs who are very, very good. And we got to hope that Bijan Robinson's going to get a ton of carries this year. They were 22nd in passing offense. And over on the defensive side of things, they were top 20 in every category. They were 18th in points allowed on defense per game. They were 20th in rush defense, and they were 8th in passing defense. So again, these stats aren't bad, but you'd like to see them a bit higher. With Kirk Cousins as your quarterback, who's very capable, as long as he's healthy, guys are going to get the ball. Darnell Mooney is a guy that I liked in Chicago, had a really good season, then kind of fell off. I don't know if he's going to be able to recapture some of that magic here in Atlanta, but it gives him another option. But with guys like Kyle Pitts and Drake London, this offense, I feel like, can be much, much better with a stable quarterback, which is why they spent all this money on Kirk Cousins. Why they drafted Michael Penix with the top 10 pick, that still remains to be seen. But I think just with their offense being better and being able to put up more points so that they're not 26th in the league, they're going to be a better football team this year. Now, taking a look at their schedule, similar to the Buccaneers, the Eagles games are going to be tough. I wouldn't be surprised if they wind up splitting with a bunch of their division rivals. Teams like the Steelers with a really good defense could be difficult too. They also got to play the Chiefs as well, so that won't be fun. I actually have their floor the exact same as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 8-9. I think that would be a very disappointing season for the Falcons, and I expect them to finish better than that. I have their ceiling actually one game higher than the Buccaneers because they play a few less difficult opponents, so I have them going at 12-5 for their ceiling. And right now, the Falcons are just a big old question mark. We have to worry about the health of Kirk Cousins. We have to see what this offense is going to look like. You have new coaching staff, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting season for them. You got to hope that this big investment pays off. We probably won't see Michael Penix for a couple seasons at least, and maybe the Falcons will be the last ones laughing. But for right now, the Falcons are in the driver's seat, in my opinion, to win the division. It's just going to come down to a matter of execution. And as of Wednesday night, the Falcons actually traded a 3rd-round pick for pass rusher Matthew Judon from the Patriots. Not only a beloved fan favorite in New England, but has been a great player. Unfortunately, coming off a major injury in which he only played 4 games last year, though he still got 4 sacks. Matthew Judon could be that pass rusher that the Falcons have been waiting for, even though he is a bit older and there are injury concerns. I think this just speaks to the Falcons trying to make moves to be as competitive as they possibly can this season, and if it pays off, who knows, they can make a deep playoff run.
Matthew Judon, body built by Taco Bell.
Then you got the Carolina Panthers. I don't want anyone to say anything, Panthers fans, that I wasn't behind you last year because, I mean, hell, you almost beat the Packers, so I guess that's something. The Panthers were the worst team in the NFL last year and didn't even get to capitalize off of the 1st overall pick because that went to the Bears. They had a very busy offseason. For example, they went out and got Dave Canales, who I think could be a good coach, but I'm just not sure about this team. And I don't think Panthers fans are either.
Does this look unsure to you?
They had a very busy free agency, not only getting Canales, but on top of that, they go and get Clowney, they get Deontay Johnson because they desperately needed somebody to throw the ball to that wasn't Adam Thielen. They shored up their offensive line with 2 guards with Lewis and Hunt. They even got Josh Nijman from the Green Bay Packers. They went and got Jewell from the Broncos. So I like the moves that they're making, but this team is just a complete and total question mark. I think Canales was the right coach to bring in for Bryce Young, but this is not a very attractive job right now. The most important thing for the Panthers this year is to figure out if Bryce Young is your franchise guy. And until they do that, these wins and losses are not really going to matter. And taking a look at last year, the numbers reflected for the most part how bad they were. In terms of points per game scored, they were 31st in the league. They were 20th in rushing offense, which was a big disappointment for me. You look at that offensive line last year, and guys like Icky, for example, you're just disappointed in, and you hope that he could have a rebound season because that run game has to be better. That's their bread and butter. They were 32nd, dead last in passing offense. And over on the defense, it wasn't much better except for their passing defense. They were 29th in points allowed per game. They were 23rd in rushing defense, and they were 3rd in passing defense. So again, you're not really worried about their secondary so much, but they also lost Brian Burns, and I don't know if Jadeveon Clowney is going to be the guy to replace him. So yeah, I'm not really too high on the Panthers this year. Because of their schedule and considering their team, right now, their floor is a 3-14 year. I do think that they will be better than they were last year, especially if Canales is the guy and can kind of develop Bryce Young. And so because of that, their ceiling, I have them all the way up at 8 and 9. And I know that doesn't sound too impressive, but if the Panthers wind up winning 8 games this year, I think a lot of it is going to be because Bryce Young has taken that next step. And for the Panthers' sake and their fans, I hope that's the case. I don't think that they're necessarily going to be the worst team in football this year, but it's definitely a possibility if Bryce Young does not perform. And if that's the case, they're going to be probably drafting another quarterback next year. The carousel is going to continue. And Panthers fans, I'm just sorry. And finally, you got the New Orleans Saints. The Saints, man. God, you all just need to rip the Band-Aid off. You need to just burn it all down. You needed to do this for years, and Saints fans know that they need to. And Saints fans, they're just waiting for the day, finally, that they have some cap room to actually do something.
La, 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 wait till I get my money right.
They brought in Chase Young, who of course had a neck injury because God forbid the Saints bring anybody who doesn't have injury concerns. They drafted O-line in the draft, which was desperately needed. They also brought in Nathan Peterman. Yeah, you just have to mention it. The Saints are just a weird football team. They brought in Derek Carr, and he just seems to be he doesn't really perform in the best moments, and I think part of that is just because he really doesn't have a ton of support around him. I don't think Derek Carr was the greatest quarterback ever, even when he was playing for the Raiders, though that one season was really good. But whether you're talking about coaching and Dennis Allen being on the hot seat for as long as he is, or you talk about really bad offensive coordinators who are now thankfully gone, the Saints just seem like this team that are just spinning their wheels. They're kind of just walking on a treadmill right now, and they're not really going in a particular direction, which is frustrating because their stats aren't the worst. You look last year at their offense, they were 9th in points per game. They were 21st in rushing offense with Jamal Williams and Alvin Kamara. That's embarrassing. They were 11th in passing offense. And then looking over at their defense, which is usually really, really good, they were 8th in points allowed per game. They were 22nd in rushing defense, and they were 10th in passing defense. So I think that there's definitely some foundational pieces there, and I don't think anybody doubts that Dennis Allen can call a good defense. It's just going to be, can you get the offense to match up with that and win those pivotal games that you need to? The Saints, I think, are going to be competitive this year, but they don't have the easiest schedule. Again, the Falcons have gotten better. The Buccaneers were pretty good last year. And the Panthers, well, they're the Panthers. But looking at their opponents, you have the Cowboys, the Chiefs they got to play, the Packers, the Eagles, the Browns, the Rams. Those are not going to be easy games. And so I know this is going to sound pretty harsh right this second, but I actually have their floor all the way down at 5-12. And again, this is if everything goes wrong. The Panthers still have a lower floor, but the Saints need to figure it out because I feel like watching them last season, all you saw was Taysom Hill played pretty well, Chris Olave, when he tried, played pretty well, and Shaheed was really damn fast. Other than that, on the offense, there wasn't much to write home about. You got to hope that this changes with a new offensive coordinator. And so I have their ceiling up at 9-8. I have the Saints finishing 3rd this year because I feel like they're just a team that needs, again, to rip off the Band-Aid and see what they're going to do. I'm not expecting big things from Derek Carr this year, though I could be pleasantly surprised. And so, yeah, I'm not super duper high on the Saints after picking them to win the division last year. I just feel like I've seen the same iteration of the team over and over again. And when they bring in some talent, it's like, ooh, this is a bright spot, but that dies down pretty quickly and it's not sustainable. So, Saints, that's where I got you. And so based off these rankings, if we're going with their ceilings, I have the Falcons finishing in first place, the Buccaneers finishing in second, the Saints finishing in third, and the Panthers finishing in fourth. But of course, let me know what you think down in the comments below. I was completely wrong about the NFC South last year. It's probably going to happen again. Let me know. You guys find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at TomGrossiComedy. All social media see down below. A big shout and thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members for supporting this channel. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.